tonight, we are going to be chatting about the great George S. Patton. And so with that in mind, everybody, let's get on with it, shall we? And as always with these presentations, I like to start out with quotes that are directly attributable, in this case, to the great General George S. Patton. Listen to some of the things that he is famous for saying. First up, it is the unconquerable nature of man and not the nature of the weapon he uses that ensures victory. Next one, go forward until the last round is fired and the last drop of gas is expended. Then go forward on foot. Next one. If I win, I can't be stopped. If I lose, I shall be dead. Next one. The test of success is not what you do when you're on top. Success is how high you bounce when you hit bottom. Next one. A pint of sweat will save a gallon of blood. Next up, wars may be fought with weapons, but they are won by men. Do your damnedest in an ostentatious manner all the time. Next quote, attributable to the great General George S. Patton, goes like this: "May God have mercy upon my enemies, because I won't." Courage is fear holding on a minute longer. Courage is fear holding on a minute longer. Next one. Lead me, follow me, or get out of my way. Next up. If you're going to win any battle, you have to do one thing. You have to make the mind run the body. Never let the body tell the mind what to do. The body is never tired if the mind is not tired. Interesting, huh? And I don't know about you folks, but I actually find that last quote the most remarkable of all of the ones that I just shared with you. I believe that what General Patton was saying here is that he believes wholeheartedly in the power of the mind. You have to make the mind run the body, he says. Think about that for a moment. You have to make the mind run the body. Patton not only believed in the power of positive thought, but he was also a very strong believer in the power of prayer. To that end, he once said this: "There are 3 ways that men get what they want: by planning, by working, and by praying." Any great military operation takes careful planning. Then you must have well-trained troops to carry it out. But between the plan and the operation, there is always that unknown. That unknown spells success or failure. Some people, he says, call that getting the breaks. I call it God. God has his part or margin in everything. That's where prayer comes in. And as a matter of fact, not only did Patton believe in the power of positive thought and the power of prayer, he was never afraid to put that into action on a daily basis. Because as you well know, it's one thing to believe in all of this, but it's actually another to put it in action on a daily basis. Here's an example about the power of prayer that he believed in. The date was the morning of December 8th, 1944. The place, the 3rd Army headquarters in Nancy, France. And here's what happened on that morning. First of all, the weather for 3 weeks had been abominable. Rain, 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 and more rain. Showers. Just unyielding, unstoppable for no less than 3 weeks. The Nazis took advantage of that and were gaining very important ground to where Patton started to feel very pressured, because this, he thought at the moment, was a battle that he could not win. Why? Because of the weather. It had everything to do with the weather. If there are low clouds, if there's constant rain, can our squadrons take off and take to the sky and push the Nazis back? No. So this is what he thought. He said, okay, prayer. Prayer is going to do it. And to that end, he picked up the phone and called his chief chaplain, asked him to come right into his office. And he said, "Chaplain, I've got an assignment for you. Do you feel up to it?" Now, who would ever say no to General George S. Patton? So the chaplain must have said, "Oh, well, of course, General. What's going on?" He said, "Okay, it's no secret here that the weather has been appalling for no less than 3 weeks. We are losing, Chaplain, and I want you to do something about it." Chaplain responds, "Well, yes, sir. What?" He goes, "Here's the agenda, Chaplain. I want you to go back and work day and night and create a prayer that everybody can use immediately to move this weather pattern. Can you do that for me, Chaplain?" "Yes, sir, right away." Chaplain left, started thinking some more, and this is the very prayer that the chaplain came up with. "Almighty and most merciful Father, we humbly beseech thee of thy great goodness to restrain these immoderate rains with which we have had to contend. Grant us fair weather for battle. Graciously hearken to us as soldiers who call upon thee, that armed with thy power we may advance from victory to victory and crush the oppression and wickedness of our enemies and establish thy justice among men and nations. Amen." And the chaplain presented that to the general. The general read it just like I did to you, and the general said, Good job, Chaplain." Amen. Amen. And here, Chaplain, is what I want you to do. I want you to copy this prayer over 300,000 times so that it can be immediately distributed to all those here in Nancy, France, who serve under me, because I want you to include specific instructions that they are, by a minimum, to use this prayer every morning. And you know what? If they feel so moved, they can use it in the afternoon, and they can use it in the evening too, but they must pray. Of course, the orders were taken and accomplished. Over 300 of those who served under Patton that day, that week, put that prayer into action. And guess what happened after a week? They stopped praying. No, it didn't snow. You know, there's a wise guy. But you know what? It serves me right for asking. Patton was able to advance, 100% correct, because out of the blue skies appeared, and it stayed perfectly clear so that our squadrons could take to the sky, and we pushed the Nazis back and Patton had another victory. Patton, folks, as you can see, was a perfect example of when you believe with your mind in something and you back it up, in this case with the power of prayer, it works. Why? Because you're not afraid to believe that it does and that it will. And Patton was a perfect example of this. Some of you may still be unconvinced. So how about this? Patton's nephew once said the following words: Patton was a man who trained and disciplined his mind and body nearly every day of his life for the role that he had always known he was to play. I think the key word in that statement is the role that he had always known that he was going to play. Because if you visualize this physically, Patton is standing here, knowing what's going to happen with him when he gets to over there. So how does he get from here all the way to here? Belief, faith, and in this case, yes, belief in God, the power of positive thought, and the power of prayer. What an incredible, powerful combination all of that is. George Smith Patton Jr. was born in San Gabriel Township, which is now known as San Marino in California, on November 11th, 1885. The Patton family is of what descent? German, good guess, but wrong. Any other guesses?
Well, Patton is an Irish name.
Irish name, very, very close, starts with an S. Scottish, that's right. The Patton family is of Scottish descent. At the young and tender age of 5, folks, he informed his parents that he wanted to become, in his words, a great general. There's that knowing again. There's that standing over here, looking over there, saying, that is what I'm going to be. And all I have to do is take the steps to get there. And why not, actually? He did come from a very long line of successful and proud military men in his family. As soon as George could read, one of the very first books he read from cover to cover happened to be a book of decisive military battles. While in school, he would constantly be found organizing what? Battles. Sham battles, that's right. And get this, folks, even on his honeymoon in France, he took his beloved bride to visit historic battlefields and fortresses. Ladies, ain't that romantic? Oh, you're just pining away, wishing that that would have occurred on your honeymoon as well. Even when George would hunt foxes or play polo, everything seemed to be as if he was on a constant virtual battlefield. He attended the United States Military Academy as soon as he was ready, but get this, he couldn't graduate. They actually held him back a year because he wasn't good in one subject. Any guesses what subject that might be? No, history he was good. Math, right? It was math. He had to repeat a year of math to graduate from the military academy. He did graduate in 1909 and received his commission as a cavalry officer. It's interesting to note that Patton found himself participating in the pentathlon during the 1912 Summer Olympic Games in Stockholm, Sweden. He would finish, get this, 3rd out of 22 contestants. That's pretty good. After that, he would perfect his saber swordsmanship at the Mounted Service School at Fort Riley, Kansas. In 1916, Patton was an aide to Brigadier General John J. Pershing, that's right, in pursuit of a gentleman named Pancho Villa. Yes. When the U.S. found itself in the midst of World War I, Pershing promoted Patton to the rank of captain. Patton was quickly promoted to that of a major, then a lieutenant colonel, and then was put in charge of the U.S. Tank Corps. In 1932, Patton proudly served under General Douglas MacArthur. In 1944, he was a big part of the Battle of the Bulge. That's right. Patton's career, as many of you know, was not without a bit of controversy from time to time. Some of you might know this next one. This actually is the most famous one of these. On August 3rd, 1943, Patton was accused of allegedly what? Yes, slapping a soldier. The incident actually nearly put an end to his glorious military career. So here's what happened. Patton was in the process of visiting patients at a military hospital in Sicily and met a soldier who happened to be crying. The general asked why the soldier was weeping, and the soldier said, in response, that his nerves were actually getting the best of him due to the constant shelling that had been going on there day and night. Patton then allegedly flew into a rage and proceeded to call the soldier a coward. Then, it is said, Patton hit the soldier on the back of the soldier's head with the back of Patton's hand. General Eisenhower was absolutely appalled when he heard of this incident. The media back in the States, along with General Eisenhower, banded together and demanded that Patton be removed from his post and immediately sent back home. Eisenhower eventually decided to keep Patton in the European theater if he would do one thing: apologize, to which Patton did, and he also happened to apologize to all of the other folks who were present at that moment in time. Patton also found out that that soldier had a very serious case of malaria, which made his apology even more profound. The soldier did end up forgiving Patton, understanding that the stress that Patton might have been under at the time may have created a lot of tension in this event. George S. Patton, unlike some other military generals of the day, truly loved his men. But admittedly, he had issues with those soldiers that suffered battle fatigue. I believe, he once said, that in war, the good of the individual must be subordinated to the good of the army. I hate and I despise slackers and cowards. And you know what, folks? That's exactly how he was. That is exactly who he was, nothing more and nothing less. I could do a 4-hour presentation on Patton's military victory, but what I'd like to do for the remainder of this talk is continue to concentrate on Patton the man, who really was Patton the legend. George Patton cared deeply about who he was and what impression he was making. Did everybody like and love him? No. And maybe there are still many today who still, after all these years, don't like or love him, and maybe for good reason. To that, George Patton once said these words: "For every man I have criticized in this army, I have probably stopped, talked to, and complimented no less than 1,000. But people are more prone to remember ill usage than recall compliments. As a matter of fact, to that end, a December 1943 Gallup poll showed the general to be 77% good, 19% bad, 4% indifferent. Contrary to popular belief, Patton was a perceptive and cultured human being of principle. War was less of a consuming passion for him than it was a means of protecting our country's freedom. It is my belief, folks, that we really do need entities like General Patton in our lives, in our culture, in our country from time to time. We need someone to wake us up and whip us into shape. Otherwise, what do? We continue to watch TV all day and watch game shows and soap operas. We need someone with energy. We need someone with verve. We need somebody with determination. Someone once said that Patton was a man who believed in the aristocracy of achievement and in the sanctity of his country's course. He was conceited, they went on to say. He was sometimes ruthless, often inconsiderate, and outwardly very, very tough. He was often too much the impetus showman and yet also a deep and careful thinker. But he was also, as they go on to say, magnificently well-read, deeply religious, soft-hearted, emotional, and he was often easily moved to tears. General Patton was also profoundly aware of the fact that in order to know who you are and what you have today, you can't even move into tomorrow without knowing where you have been yesterday. That's right. To that end, he was a meticulous follower of history and could remember every historical fact and every historical nuance. He could literally predict, folks, what was going to happen in a present situation because of his intense knowledge of the past. General Patton also had a fantastic photographic memory. He could often quote word by word from the Bible, from military history, from general history, from Shakespeare, and get this, from the Koran as well. While other people specialized in collecting beer steins and pieces of rare art, Patton collected maps. Tons and tons of maps. Why? Help him in his war efforts. That's right. For example, with his maps of Germany and France, he would memorize both those countries' network of roads. He also knew, obviously, every single battlefield, large and small, in those areas as well. In one battle that Patton waged, he was successful because he used, get this, the very ancient roads that William the Conqueror used in his battles in Normandy centuries earlier. Did the present enemy ever think that Patton would resort to using what was left of ancient roads in his military strategy? Heck no! Was that a smart and winning strategy? You betcha, yes. Patton's knowledge of history, and this is an amazing fact, folks, could have also saved us many toils and defeats. Here's a case in point. In 1937, Patton just happened to be on assignment in Hawaii. It was during that time that Patton, then a colonel, released a report in vivid detail, predicting the attack on Pearl Harbor by the Japanese. And that attack actually occurred 4 years later. So, why didn't anyone listen to him? Here are his words. I turned the report into the ranking naval officer of the command, and he just put it in his safe. How did Patton know that this would happen 4 years before it actually did? Because he studied the last time that Japan decided to carry out a successful sneak attack. The year was 1904, and the Japanese attacked Russian forces that were stationed at Port Arthur and totally caught the Russians off guard. And from this one incident, Patton knew instinctively that something like this not only might happen again, but would happen again. And sure enough, unfortunately, the attack on Pearl Harbor did. You couldn't even begin to think of a way to measure the respect and love most of Patton's men had for him. He was loyal to his men. He always looked out for their interests. He was a flamboyant character, and boy, did he know it too. Patton made sure that he always looked and acted the part too. He thought that, of course, this would go a long way in motivating the troops, and it certainly did. He was 100% right. His helmet was always highly polished. He would wear riding pants and very high cavalry boots. The vehicles that he would choose to ride in would always sport oversized rank insignia and would have extremely loud, very piercing horns. Now, I think there are some of you here who may have served under General Patton. And if that is the case, could you raise your hand or hands, please? Now how did I know that? Would you share with them the story you shared with me just before I began? It's a very slight but very interesting story. And I'll repeat it so all of you can hear.
Well, he might have got the rain stop, but he sure didn't get the snow stop up in Belgium because it got pretty deep. I was in the Battle of the Bulge.
He was in the Battle of the Bulge. So they were on the road in a convoy in Europe, and one night they were ordered immediately to pull off the road right away. Why? Because Patton was coming through. Now, this may or may not have happened. Was there a big ruckus when he went through? Did you see his car or anything like that? Yes, and you were told to make way, I bet. So, Patton was also famous for using what? A certain type of word. Salty language. There you go. And let's be more specific, profanity. And he used it quite often and very liberally, particularly when it came time to give a speech, to motivate his people, to motivate his forces. I wanted to read a speech of his for you this evening, but I thought better of it because almost every other word was profane. And if you even take those words out, the power of the speech is kind of lost in a way, which is why I started with his quotes instead. So, did he also speak with a very low, powerful voice, kind of like George C. Scott did in the movie of Patton? No. How did he speak? He had a very sort of high voice. Now, I don't know if it was exactly like this, but it wasn't like that. So, that may be one of the reasons why he decided to illustrate his speeches with some profanity as well. But who knows specifically? But suffice it to say that even with the tone of his voice, the sound of his voice, and the words that he would often use in his speeches, He was a major motivator. And of course, he had to be in that position. And he was that 150%. Patton did his best, and it always seemed to be good enough. Was Patton a tough taskmaster? You bet he was. But it's interesting to note that Patton was always a lot harder on himself than he was on anyone else. This is a man who also, at any time, in any given situation, would be ready to lay his life on the line to defend his beliefs. Folks, General Patton always thought that he would die in battle. How strange and really ultimately disappointing to him that his passing had absolutely nothing to do with that. On December 9th, 1945, in Germany, one day before he was supposed to return to the U.S., Patton was severely injured in an automobile accident. Patton, with his chief of staff, they were on a pleasure trip that day to hunt pheasant in an area right outside of Mannheim, Germany. A truck coming from the other direction suddenly hit their car head on. It was, to say the least, a devastating blow. How so? During the impact, Patton was thrown forward and hit his head on the metal part of the partition between the car's front and back seats. This injury left George S. Patton totally paralyzed from the neck down. As one would fully expect, he bravely fought to stay alive. And at one point, get this, extremely sharp hooks were attached to his cheekbones. This was counterbalanced by a 10-pound weight that was specially designed to pull his head and backbone to relieve the pressure on his spine. He would also be subject to countless injections and infusions. And during all of this, the general never once complained and treated everyone involved with his treatment with nothing but utter love, compassion, and respect. 12 days after that incident occurred, we would lose the great General George S. Patton when he died in his sleep at the military hospital in Heidelberg, Germany, with his beloved wife by his side. He was 60 years of age when he passed. 60. Strangely enough, folks, and I emphasize strangely here, both of his daughters had premonitions of his passing. He also had a son, but it was his daughters that both reported the following. On the day of Patton's passing, one of his daughters woke up from a dream only to find the figure of her father standing before her bed in the middle of the night in full uniform, sitting eventually at a bay window in her bedroom. And he looked right at her. He smiled as if everything was okay, and then, in an instant, he vanished right before her eyes. She was nowhere near where he was, far, far away. It was only later that she found out that he had passed before he appeared to her. His other daughter, on that very same night, was awakened in the middle of her sleep in her bedroom that night by the phone. And when she picked up the phone, she distinctly heard the voice of her father saying these words, "Little B, are you all right? Little B, are you all right?" Little did B know that her father had actually passed on way before that phone call occurred that night. I've had, in doing this presentation a number of times, a number of people who have served under Patton come up to me and talk to me about their experience with him, as we heard this evening. And in one of the previous places that I've done this presentation, I had a gentleman also come up to me at the end, and he said, "You know what, Robert? I served under General George S. Patton, and there was something that you didn't include in your presentation." And I said, "Well, please, do tell." And he said, "You know, he would talk about this to us often. Patton also believed in reincarnation." And I said, "You're kidding." It's funny, but I never saw this in any of the research that I consulted for this presentation. And he interrupted me and he said, "Well, you know what? You wouldn't. Because who would put something like that in any research material that people would even believe it?" But you know what? He talked to us about that often. As a matter of fact, he even knew who he was before this. So, take that with a grain of salt, but it comes from what I feel may be a reliable source. In closing, I would like to say a few more things for you. When he was only 19 and at Westport, Patton wrote the following in his diary: "By perseverance and study and eternal desire, any man may be great." Interesting. Any man may be great. Patton knew he had to make himself into the hero that his men looked up to him for and expected him to be. A reporter once said these words: "General George S. Patton believed he was the greatest soldier who ever lived. He made himself believe that he would never falter through doubt. This absolute faith in himself as a strategist and daring infected his entire army, until the men of the 2nd American Air Corps in Africa and later the 3rd Army in France believed that they could not be defeated under his leadership." There are those words again: believe, faith, what it is to get from here to there. How do you fill in the spaces? Because it's one thing seeing yourself over there from here, but it's another taking the steps to get there. And Patton, yes, an amazing military hero, amazing. But I believe an equally amazing man of faith, power, determination, and belief, because he was human, just like you and me. He wanted the same things that you and I want on a daily basis. But he had some very important shoes to fill. They were his own. And through that, the power of positive thought and the power of prayer, he accomplished his goals. He says that everybody can do that if they believe. And with that, I'd like to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for this evening. Thank you.